Kim Tae-ho sat in his chair watching the green lines move across his computer screen. The night shift at the Jeju Island listening post was usually quiet. Most nights he would drink coffee and listen to static from space while reading old books. Tonight felt different, though. Something was coming through the speakers that did not sound like the usual noise. He turned up the volume and leaned closer to his desk. The sound was strange. It had a pattern to it like music, but not any music he had ever heard before. Tae-ho had been working at the SETI station for 12 years. He knew what space sounded like, and this was not it. The computer started beeping. Numbers appeared on his screen faster than he could read them. The signal was strong and getting stronger. Tae-ho grabbed his phone and called his supervisor. "Park Hye-jin speaking," came the voice on the other end. "Director Park, this is Tae-ho at Station 3. We have something unusual here. The computers are going crazy and there is a signal coming in that I have never heard before. Park Hye-jin." Had been sleeping, but she was awake now. In her 20 years of running the communications center, she had heard many false alarms. But Tae-ho was not the type to call unless something was really wrong. "I will be there in 30 minutes. Do not touch anything until I arrive. Record everything." Tae-ho did as he was told. He watched the signal get stronger and more complex. The pattern was becoming clearer now. It was not random noise. Someone or something was trying to communicate. When Park Hye-jin arrived at the station, she found Tae-ho staring at his screen with wide eyes. The signal was now so strong that it was drowning out everything else. "How long has this been going on?" she asked. 2 hours now. It started weak, but it keeps getting stronger. Look at this." Tae-ho pointed to his screen. "The computer thinks this is a language." Park Hye-jin looked at the analysis. The artificial intelligence program was trying to find patterns in the signal. It had identified what looked like words and sentences. The structure was complex but logical. "Call Lee Dong-woo. Wake him up if you have to. We need someone who understands languages." Lee Dong-woo arrived at the station 1 hour later. He was a thin man with thick glasses who spoke 7 languages and had studied alien communication theory for most of his career. Everyone thought his work was useless until tonight. "Show me what you have," he said to Tae-ho. The signal had changed. Again. Now it was repeating the same message over and over. The computer had recorded 47 minutes of the repeated transmission. Lee Dong-woo sat down and began working. He used every program and technique he knew to break down the signal. The language was unlike anything on Earth, but it followed rules that made sense. After 6 hours of work, he looked up at Park Hye-jin and Tae-ho. His face was pale. "This is a message. I can translate about 60% of it. You are not going to like what it says." Park Hye-jin poured herself another cup of coffee. "Tell me," Lee Dong-woo read from his notes. "The message is addressed to what they call Subject World 7749. They are demanding immediate surrender and tribute. They want all military forces to stand down and all leaders to report for processing." "Processing?" asked Tae-ho. "I think it means they want to take our leaders somewhere. The message says resistance will result in complete destruction of the planet." Park Hye-jin felt her stomach drop. "Are you sure about this translation?" The bull. "Parts I can understand are very clear. This is a surrender demand. They are giving us 7 days to comply or they will destroy Earth." The 3 of them sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, the sun was starting to rise over the ocean. It looked peaceful and normal. Nothing like a world that had just received a threat from space. "There is more," said Lee Dong-woo. "The message includes star charts and fleet positions. I think they are trying to show us how powerful they are. The numbers are huge. Thousands of ships spread across dozens of star systems." Park Hye-jin picked up her phone. "I need to call Seoul. Then I need to call Geneva. This is going to change everything." While Park Hye-jin made her calls, Lee Dong-woo continued working on the translation. More details were becoming clear. The aliens called themselves the Vorthak Empire. They had been conquering worlds for thousands of years. The message made it sound like this was routine for them. "They think we are just another primitive planet," Lee Dong-woo told Tae-ho. "Look at this part of the message. They are offering to let some of our people live as slaves if we surrender quickly." Tae-ho shook his head. "They picked the wrong planet." By noon, the small listening post was full of people. Military officers, government officials, and scientists had flown in from around the world. Everyone wanted to see the alien message for themselves. Park Hae-jin found herself in charge of the most important discovery in human history. She had set up a secure communication link with the United Nations headquarters in New York. World leaders were gathering for an emergency meeting. The Secretary General of the United Nations, a calm woman named Dr. Sarah Kim, appeared on the video screen. Behind her sat the leaders of every major country on Earth. Director Park, please give us your report. Park Hae-jin explained everything they had learned: the alien message, the translation, and the 7-day deadline. When she finished, there was silence on the screen. Finally, the Secretary General spoke. Dr. Lee, how certain are you about this translation? Lee Dong-woo adjusted his glasses. The basic message is clear. They want us to surrender or they will attack. I am working on understanding more details, but that part is definite. And you believe this message was meant for Earth? The star charts they included show our solar system. They know exactly where we are. The President of the United States leaned forward. Could this be a hoax? Some kind of elaborate joke? The signal is coming from outside our solar system, said Park Hae-jin. No human technology could fake this. The power requirements alone would be impossible. Then we need to assume this is real, said the Secretary General. The question now is, how do we respond? The Russian president spoke up. We have 7 days. That is not enough time to build any meaningful defense. Maybe we should try to negotiate, suggested the Prime Minister of Japan. Find out what they really want. They made it clear what they want, said the Chinese Premier. Total surrender. Park Hae-jin listened to the world leaders argue about their options. She looked over at Tai-ho, who was still monitoring the alien signal. He had discovered something that might change everything. Excuse me, she said, interrupting the discussion. My technician has found something else. Tai-ho spoke into the camera. The aliens are still transmitting, but now they are sending different messages to other star systems. I think we accidentally received a message that was meant for somewhere else. What do you mean? Asked the Secretary General. The message was supposed to go to their colony in what they call the Andromeda sector. Something went wrong with their transmission, and it bounced to us instead. Lee Dong-woo looked up from his work. That explains why they included fleet positions and tactical information. They were updating their military commanders, not threatening a new world. So they do not know about Earth yet? Asked the German Chancellor. I do not think so. But they will figure it out soon, when their real message does not arrive where it was supposed to go. The Secretary General thought for a moment. This gives us an advantage. We know about them, but they do not know about us yet. What kind of advantage? Asked the British Prime Minister. We still cannot fight them. Park Hae-jin smiled for the first time that day. Maybe we cannot fight them, but we can surprise them. They are not expecting any response at all from coordinates 7749. When they do get a response, it will not be what they expect. The world leaders looked at each other through their video screens. For the first time since the crisis, someone was talking about fighting back instead of surrendering. What are you suggesting? Asked the Secretary General. We send them a message back. Use their own frequency. Let them know they dialed the wrong number and got the wrong planet. And then what? Park Hae-jin looked out the window at the peaceful ocean. In a few days, that peace might be gone forever. But humans had never been good at accepting defeat. Then, we see what humanity can do when someone tries to make us slaves. War Commander Nexthull stood on the bridge of his flagship staring at the holographic display. Something was wrong with the communication array. The message to Colony 7749 had not been acknowledged. For 3 days, he had waited for the usual response confirming receipt of his orders. Nexthull was a tall creature with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. He had been conquering worlds for the Vorthak Empire for 200 years. Never in all that time had a message gone unanswered. Communications officer, run another diagnostic on the array, he ordered. The younger Vorthak at the communication station worked quickly. All systems show normal function, War Commander. The message was transmitted successfully. Then why have we received no response? Before anyone could answer, the communication board lit up with an incoming signal. It was coming from the same coordinates where Colony 7749 should be located. "Finally," muttered Next Hull. "Put it through." Instead of the expected acknowledgement from his colonial administrator, a strange voice came through the speakers. The language was completely unknown to Next Hull, but his translation computer worked quickly to convert it. "Thank you for your message. We decline your offer of subjugation. Please update your records accordingly. Have a nice day." Next Hull stared at the communication board. In 2 centuries of military service, he had never heard anything like this. Response: worlds did not decline subjugation. They begged for mercy or they died. Communications officer, there must be an error in the translation system. The officer checked his equipment again. "All translation protocols are functioning normally, War Commander." "Then send our standard response. Explain the consequences of resistance." The next message was transmitted within the hour. It contained detailed descriptions of what happened to worlds that refused to surrender. Images of destroyed cities and enslaved populations accompanied the text. The response came back even faster than before. "Thank you for the additional information. We have reviewed your terms and conditions. We must respectfully decline. We suggest you consider alternative career paths. Best wishes for your future endeavors." Next Hull felt his 4 hands clench into fists. No species had ever responded to Vorthak threats with politeness. The response was so unusual that he began to wonder if Colony 7749 had been taken over by rebels. "Send a priority message to Empire Command," he ordered. "Request information on the current status of Colony 7749. While waiting for a response from headquarters, Next Hull decided to investigate further. He ordered his communications team to scan all transmissions coming from the target coordinates. What they found was even more confusing. The signals were not coming from a Vorthak colony at all. The technology was primitive, but the civilization appeared to be completely independent. Worse yet, they seemed to be studying Vorthak transmissions and learning from them. On Earth, Lee Dongwu was having the time of his life. The alien response had been much easier to translate than the original message. The Vorthaks used simple, direct language when they were angry. "They sent us pictures of destroyed planets," he told Park Hyojin. "I think they are trying to scare us." Park Hyojin looked at the images on her screen. Cities in ruins, populations in chains, entire worlds turned into slave camps. It was horrifying but also informative. They have done this before, many times. "The pattern is always the same," agreed Lee Dongwu. "They send a surrender demand, the world gives up, and they move in. They are not expecting anyone to say no." Choi Min-ah, the quantum communications engineer who had joined their team, was working on a different problem. She was trying to understand how Vorthak communication technology worked. "Their system is actually quite sophisticated," she reported. "They can send messages across thousands of light years instantly. But there is something strange about how they use it." "What do you mean?" asked Park Hee-jin. "Most of their transmissions are one way. They send orders and expect acknowledgement, but they do not seem to have conversations. It is like they are used to talking to people who never talk back." This observation was being discussed in emergency meetings around the world. Military strategists and psychologists were trying to understand what kind of enemy humanity was facing. Yoon Jae-sung, the UN Secretary General's military advisor, had been studying every piece of information they had gathered about the Vorthaks. His conclusions were disturbing. "Based on their communications and the images they sent us, the Vorthak Empire appears to operate on a system of pure intimidation," he reported to the Emergency Council. "They show up, make threats, and expect immediate surrender. Most civilizations comply without ever seeing actual combat." "What happens to civilizations that do fight back?" asked the Secretary General. "That is the interesting part. We cannot find evidence of any prolonged conflicts in their transmissions. Either everyone surrenders immediately or resistance is crushed so quickly that it barely registers as a war. So they are not used to fighting. They are not used to anyone fighting back at all. This information changed everything about how the world leaders viewed their situation. Instead of facing an experienced military force, they were dealing with bullies who had never encountered real resistance. The decision was made to continue responding to Vorthak messages with polite refusals. Each response would be designed to confuse and frustrate the aliens while buying time for humanity to prepare. Nexthul was becoming increasingly agitated as more messages arrived from the mysterious world. Each response was more baffling than the last. We appreciate your concern for our planetary well-being. However, we must inform you that we are quite satisfied with our current governmental arrangements. Thank you for thinking of us. Your fleet specifications are impressive. We are sure you are very proud of your ships. Unfortunately, we will not be requiring your services at this time. We have considered your proposal carefully. While we understand this may be disappointing, we believe our decision is in everyone's best interest. We hope you will respect our choice. The final message that day included what appeared to be suggestions for the Vorthak Empire's improvement. We noticed that your expansion strategy relies heavily on fear-based compliance. Have you considered the benefits of voluntary cooperation? We would be happy to discuss alternative approaches to interstellar relations. Nexthul threw his communication tablet across the bridge. It shattered against the metal wall with a satisfying crash. Prepare the punishment fleet, he ordered. I want 12 dreadnoughts ready for immediate departure. His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Korthul, stepped forward. War Commander, we have not received authorization from Empire Command for military action. I do not need authorization to discipline a rebellious colony. With respect, sir, the evidence suggests this is not one of our colonies. The technology signatures are completely unknown. Nexthul studied the tactical reports more carefully. Korthul was right. This was not a Vorthak colony in rebellion. This was something else entirely. Then what is it? An independent civilization that somehow intercepted one of our colonial communications. They appear to be unaware of who they are dealing with. For the first time since the crisis began, Nexthul smiled. An unknown primitive world had accidentally received a Vorthak, surrender demand, and was too ignorant to be properly terrified. Perfect. We will use them as an example. When word spreads that even accidental contact with the Vorthak Empire results in destruction, it will strengthen our reputation throughout the galaxy. Should we not attempt to determine their military capabilities first? Nexthul waved all four hands dismissively. What military capabilities could they possibly have? They do not even know who we are. Their responses suggest a primitive society that thinks politeness will protect them from annihilation. On Earth, Choi Min-ah had made a breakthrough. By analyzing the alien communication protocols, she had learned how to trace their signals back to their source. The messages are coming from a massive fleet, she reported to the Emergency Council. Based on the signal strength and routing patterns, I estimate at least 50 large ships. How large? Asked the Secretary General. Each one appears to be several kilometers long. They are positioned just outside our solar system's detection range. Can we determine their intentions? Lee Dongwu had been monitoring all Vorthak transmissions. They are preparing to send what they call a punishment fleet. 12 ships are being dispatched to teach us proper respect for Vorthak authority. How long until they arrive? Based on their previous communications about travel times, approximately 4 months. The world leaders looked at each other through their video screens. 4 months to prepare for an alien invasion. It seemed impossible, but it was all the time they had. What do we know about their military capabilities? Asked the Chinese premier. Their own communications suggest they rarely need to use military force, reported Yoon Jae-sung. Most worlds surrender before any fighting begins. We are dealing with an empire built on reputation rather than combat experience. That could be good news for us, said the American president. Or very bad news, replied the Russian president. If their reputation is based on reality, 12 of their ships could destroy our entire planet. Park Hye-jin had been thinking about this problem. There is one. Han Soo-jin had never expected to become an admiral. 2 months ago, she had been captain of a cargo hauler moving supplies between Earth and the Moon. Now she stood in the command center of what used to be the International Space Station, watching. Dozens of screens showing the construction of humanity's first battle fleet. The transformation had been remarkable. Every nation on Earth had contributed ships, weapons, and personnel to the defense effort. Cargo haulers had been fitted with missile launchers. Mining vessels had been converted into mobile weapons platforms. Even tourist shuttles had been armed, with whatever weapons could be mounted on their hulls. Admiral, the Australian contingent has arrived, reported her communications officer. 3 mining vessels and a research ship. Han Soo-jin nodded. Every day brought more ships to their growing fleet. It was not much compared to what was coming, but it was everything humanity could manage in 4 months. Lim Ki-tai, the chief engineer of the defense project, approached with his daily report. He looked tired but determined. The orbital platforms are 60% complete, he said. We have 47 weapon stations positioned around Earth and another 23 defending the moon. Will they be enough? Against 12 alien dreadnoughts? Probably not, but they will make those aliens work for their victory. That had become the unofficial motto of the defense project. They could not win, but they could make the aliens pay a price for their conquest. Oh, young me had been studying every piece of Vorthak communication they had intercepted. As humanity's first xenopsychologist, she was trying to understand how the alien mind worked. They are not warriors, she reported to the Defense Council. Everything in their communications suggests they are administrators and police officers. They maintain order in an empire, but they do not fight wars. What is the difference? Asked Han Soo-jin. Warriors expect resistance. They plan for unexpected situations and adapt their tactics. Police officers expect compliance. When someone does not obey, they escalate until obedience is restored. So they will keep escalating until we surrender? Or until they destroy us. Their psychology appears to be very rigid. They cannot comprehend a situation where escalation does not produce the desired result. This information had shaped humanity's defense strategy. Instead of trying to defeat the alien fleet directly, they would focus on being unpredictable. Every human response would be designed to confuse and frustrate aliens who expected simple compliance. The work continued around the clock. Factories that had produced cars were now building missiles. Computer programmers who had written games were now developing targeting systems. Retired soldiers were training teenagers to operate weapons that had been invented just weeks earlier. Park. Hyojin had become the coordinator between Earth's defense forces and the Global Intelligence Network. Her team continued monitoring alien communications while also trying to understand their technology. We have learned something interesting about their ships, she reported to Admiral Han. They are enormous, but they are not built for combat. What do you mean? Think of them as mobile cities rather than battleships. They are designed to transport large numbers of troops and administrators to control conquered worlds. Most of their bulk is living space and administrative facilities. So they are not as heavily armed as we feared? They have weapons, but not as many as a ship that size could carry. They rely on intimidation rather than firepower. This was encouraging news, but it came with a warning. Lee Dong-woo had been analyzing the tactical information included in the original alien message. The Vorthaks have conquered hundreds of worlds, he reminded everyone. Even if their ships are not pure warships, they must have some military capability, or they could not have maintained their empire. The question is whether their military capability is designed to fight space battles or just to bombard defenseless planets, said Oh Young-mi. As the months passed, more details emerged about the approaching alien fleet. Choi Min-ah had developed new ways to intercept and decode Vorthak communications. They are maintaining radio silence, but we can still track their hyperspace signatures, she reported. 12 ships as expected. They will arrive in 17 days. Any change in their course? No. They are heading directly for Earth. No signs of caution or reconnaissance. They are still treating this as a police action, observed Oh Young-mi. They expect to arrive, make a show of force, and watch us surrender. Admiral Han studied the tactical display, showing the positions of humanity's defense forces. It was not impressive compared to the alien fleet, but it represented everything their species could accomplish in 4 months of desperate preparation. What do we know about their battle tactics? Based on their communications, they typically position their fleet in orbit around the target world and demand surrender, said Lee Dong-woo. If the world refuses, they bombard population centers until compliance is achieved. They have never fought another fleet in space? There is no record of it in any communication we have intercepted. This gave Admiral Han an idea. The aliens expected to face a planet, not a fleet. They would position their ships for orbital bombardment, not space combat. We will not defend the planet, she announced to her staff. We will attack their fleet. Admiral, our ships are not designed for space combat either, protested Lim Ki-tae. Neither are theirs. The difference is that we know we are improvising. They think they are following standard procedure. The plan that emerged was unlike anything in military history. Instead of waiting for the aliens to establish orbital positions, humanity's fleet would attack immediately when the alien ships arrived. We will use everything we have learned about their psychology against them, explained Oh Young-mi. They expect us to be afraid. Instead, we will be aggressive. They expect us to defend. Instead, we will attack. They expect us to follow rules. Instead, we will improvise. The final preparations were frantic. Every available weapon was loaded onto every available ship. Volunteers who had never been in space were given crash courses in combat operations. Emergency protocols were established for every possible scenario. Shin Hyun-woo had been a test pilot before the crisis began. Now he commanded the first squadron of human spacefighters. His ships were modified construction pods, armed with mining lasers and improvised missiles. Remember, he told his pilots during their final briefing, we are not trying to destroy their ships. We are trying to confuse them, hit them from unexpected angles, make them wonder what else we have planned. Jung Eun-hee commanded the Asteroid Belt Defense Network. Her bases were hidden inside asteroids that had been hollowed out and filled with weapons. The aliens would not detect them until it was too late. Wait until they are committed to their approach, she instructed her commanders. Let them think they know where all our defenses are located. Then show them they were wrong. Park Sang-ho had been a video game designer before becoming humanity's tactical coordinator. His background in creating unpredictable computer opponents proved surprisingly useful for planning their defense. The aliens think in straight lines, he explained to the Defense Council. They send a message, they get a response, they take an action. We are going to break that pattern. Every time they think they understand what we are doing, we will do something else. On the day the alien fleet was scheduled to arrive, every human in the solar system was at their battle station. The orbital platforms were fully armed and operational. The mobile fleet was positioned for immediate attack. The asteroid defenses were powered up and waiting. Admiral Han stood on the bridge of her flagship, a converted space freighter that now bristled with weapons. Around her, officers who had been civilians just months before worked at stations they had learned to operate through necessity rather than training. Hyperspace signatures detected, reported the sensor officer. 12 large contacts dropping, out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Here they come, muttered Admiral Han. Let us show them what happens when you threaten humanity. The Vorthak fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. War Commander Nexthul stood on his bridge, satisfied with the precision of the arrival. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Communications. Send the standard surrender demand, he ordered. Yes, War Commander. The message was transmitted toward the planet. Nexthul expected the usual response. Panic, pleas for mercy, and rapid capitulation. Instead, the response came from directly ahead of his fleet. Welcome to our solar system. We hope you have enjoyed your journey. Unfortunately, visiting hours are over. Please turn around and go home. Nexthul stared at his tactical display. According to his sensors, dozens of primitive spacecraft were approaching his fleet at high speed. It made no sense. Planets did not attack invasion fleets. They cowered and surrendered. War Commander, reported his tactical officer. We are detecting multiple contacts approaching from various vectors. Some appear to be armed. Armed with what? Primitive kinetic weapons? Unknown, sir. Their technology is too primitive for detailed analysis. Nexthul was not concerned. Primitive weapons could not penetrate Vorthak's shields. This was probably some kind of ceremonial display meant to show respect for Vorthak power. Ignore them. Proceed to standard orbital positions. That was when Admiral Han gave the order that changed everything. War Commander Nexthul had expected the usual display of overwhelming force to end resistance within minutes. Instead, 30 minutes into the battle, his fleet was scattered across the solar system and 2 of his dreadnoughts were severely damaged. Report! He shouted at his tactical officer. The enemy is using unconventional tactics, War Commander. They attack from multiple vectors simultaneously, retreat before we can respond effectively, then attack from new positions. They are primitives, with crude weapons. How are they damaging our ships? They are not trying to destroy our vessels, sir. They are targeting specific systems, communications arrays, sensor clusters, weapon mounts. It is as if they studied our ship designs and identified weaknesses. Nexthole stared at the tactical display showing his fleet's positions. His ships were designed for orbital bombardment, not space combat. Their weapons were meant to attack stationary planetary targets, not fast-moving enemy vessels. Shin Hyun-woo led his fighter squadron in another attack run against the alien flagship. His modified construction pod was never meant for combat, but it was fast and difficult to target. "Tiger Squadron, focus fire on the communication tower," he ordered over the radio. "Dragon Squadron, hit their sensor array on the port side." The human fighters swarmed around the massive alien ship like angry insects. Their weapons were weak individually, but concentrated fire was proving effective against alien systems. "This is incredible," reported one of his pilots. "Their shields stop our big weapons, but these mining lasers are getting through somehow. Keep hitting them. Make them think about defense instead of attack." The alien ship tried to bring its main weapons to bear on the fighters, but the guns were too slow to track such small, fast targets. The massive vessel had been designed to intimidate planets, not fight nimble opponents. Jung Eun-hee watched the battle from her command center inside Asteroid Base 7. Her hidden weapons platforms had achieved complete surprise when they opened. "Fire! Base 3 reports direct hit on alien ship number 4, her communications officer announced. "Their main engine is venting atmosphere." "Excellent. Base 5, can you get a shot at ship number 7? "Negative. Too much debris in the way." Jung Eun-hee smiled. The debris was intentional. Human ships had been releasing scrap metal, empty fuel tanks, and other junk throughout the battle zone. It was interfering with alien sensors and providing cover for human forces. "All bases, prepare for Phase 2 of the operation." Phase 2 involved something the aliens had never encountered before. Fake retreat, followed by ambush. Half the human fleet would appear to flee in panic, while the other half remained hidden, waiting for the aliens to pursue. Park Sang-ho coordinated the deception from his position aboard Admiral Han's flagship. His experience designing adaptive AI opponents was proving invaluable in creating unpredictable battle tactics. "The aliens are taking the bait," he reported. 6 of their ships are breaking formation to pursue our retreating vessels." "Perfect. Spring the trap." The ships that had been hiding behind the moon suddenly appeared, catching the pursuing alien vessels in a crossfire. Meanwhile, the ships that had been retreating turned around and attacked their pursuers from behind. War Commander Nexthole watched in disbelief as his tactical situation deteriorated further. How are they coordinating these attacks? Their technology should not allow this level of communication. His communication officer looked confused. "Sir, they appear to be using multiple communication methods simultaneously. Radio, laser, quantum entanglement, and some techniques we cannot identify." "That is impossible. No primitive species has access to quantum communication." "Nevertheless, sir, they are demonstrating capabilities that exceed our intelligence estimates." What the aliens did not understand was that humanity had been forced to innovate. With only 4 months to prepare, human engineers had combined every available technology into their communication system. Military radios, civilian internet, quantum research equipment, even amateur radio operators were all part of the network. Admiral Han monitored the battle from her command center, watching as her improvised fleet held its own against an enemy that should have been invincible. "Damage report," she ordered. "We have lost 4 ships with 7 more heavily damaged," reported her tactical officer. "But alien ships 5 and 9 are dead in space, and 6 others show significant damage." "They are not fighting back effectively?" "They seem confused by our tactics. Their return fire is poorly coordinated, and they keep trying to form up in defensive formations that we simply ignore." This was exactly what Oh Young-mi had predicted. The aliens were following procedures designed for a different kind of warfare. They expected organized resistance from military formations, not chaotic attacks from improvised forces. "All ships, continue random attack patterns. Do not let them predict our next move." The battle continued for 6 hours. Both sides took damage, but the psychological effect was entirely one-sided. The humans knew they were fighting for their survival and had expected heavy losses. The aliens had expected an easy victory and were unprepared for any resistance at all. "War Commander," reported Nexthole's second-in-command, "we are receiving priority communications from 3 other battle fleets." "What do they want?" "They are requesting immediate assistance." All three report that their target worlds have begun active resistance. Next Hull felt his four hearts sink. How is that possible? Unknown, sir. The resistance began within hours of our engagement here. What Next Hull did not know was that humanity had been broadcasting every moment of the battle throughout the galaxy. Lee Dongwu and his team had learned to use the Vorthak communication network against them. We are showing every enslaved world that the mighty Vorthak Empire can be fought, Lee Dongwu had explained to the Defense Council. When they see our ships attacking Vorthak dreadnoughts, they will realize that resistance is possible. The plan was working. Across the galaxy, worlds that had been enslaved for decades were rising in rebellion. The psychological impact of seeing humans fight back was spreading faster than the Vorthak could respond. Sir, reported the alien communication. Officer? We are receiving surrender requests from several of our own colonial administrators. They are asking permission to evacuate their worlds. Evacuation? Why would they need to evacuate? Planetary rebellions, sir. The local populations have seized Vorthak facilities and are demanding immediate withdrawal of all Imperial forces. Next, Hull realized that his simple punishment mission had somehow triggered the collapse of the Vorthak Empire. This primitive world had not only refused to surrender, it had inspired universal rebellion against Vorthak rule. How many worlds are in rebellion? The number is growing every hour, sir. Current estimate is over 200 worlds with active resistance movements. The battle around Earth was reaching its climax. Shin Hun-Woo's fighters had disabled the weapon systems on 3 alien ships. Jung Eun-hee's asteroid bases had destroyed 2 more. The remaining alien vessels were trying to retreat, but human ships were harassing them at every turn. Admiral, reported Park Sang-ho, the aliens are attempting to withdraw from the system. Let them go? No. Chase them. Make them fight for every kilometer. Show every world in the galaxy that humans do not let bullies walk away. The pursuit continued for 12 hours as the alien fleet limped toward the edge of the solar system. Human ships attacked continuously, never allowing the aliens to rest or regroup. When the surviving Vorthak ships finally escaped into hyperspace, they left behind 4 destroyed dreadnoughts and the wreckage of 2 centuries of Imperial dominance. War Commander. Next Hull sat in his damaged command chair, staring at reports flooding in from across the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire was collapsing. Rebellions were spreading to every sector. Colonial administrators were abandoning their posts and fleeing for their lives. How did this happen? He asked his bridge crew. His tactical officer, a young Vorthak, who had never experienced defeat before, looked up from his reports. We picked the wrong species, War Commander. What do you mean? Most species surrender when threatened. This species gets angry. Most species accept defeat when outgunned. This species fights harder. Most species follow predictable patterns. This species does whatever we do not expect. Next, Hull studied the final battle reports. His fleet had possessed overwhelming technological superiority. His ships were larger, better armed, and more heavily shielded than anything the humans possessed. None of that had mattered. They won by being unpredictable. They won by never accepting that they could not win. Even when we damaged their ships, they kept attacking. Even when we destroyed their vessels, the survivors kept fighting. I have never seen anything like it. Neither had anyone else in the galaxy. For the first time in centuries, someone had stood up to the Vorthak Empire and won. The psychological impact was spreading faster than any fleet could travel. Admiral Han received the final casualty reports 12 hours after the battle ended. Humanity had lost 19 ships with dozens more damaged. Nearly 300 people had died defending their world. It could have been much worse, observed Lim Ki-tae. It will be much worse next time, replied Admiral Han. They will come, back with more ships and better preparation. Will they? Admiral Han looked at the communications reports flooding in from across the galaxy. Kim Bo-ra had been a language teacher before the alien crisis began. Now she stood in the Grand Assembly Hall of what had once been the Vorthak Imperial Senate, addressing representatives from 300 liberated worlds. The transformation had been remarkable. 6 months after the battle at Earth, the Vorthak Empire had completely collapsed. What emerged in its place was something unprecedented in galactic history, a voluntary alliance of free worlds. The Galactic Liberation Alliance is not an empire, she told the assembled delegates. We do not seek to rule anyone. We seek to ensure that no one rules you against your will. The response was overwhelming. Species that had been enslaved for generations were experiencing freedom for the first time. They looked to humanity not as new masters, but as the ones who had shown them that masters could be defeated. Lee Tae-young commanded humanity's first interstellar exploration fleet. His ships were no longer converted cargo haulers and mining vessels. Using captured Vorthak technology and human innovation, Earth had built a proper space navy in just 6 months. "Admiral, we are receiving distress calls from the Kepler 442 system," reported his communication officer. "Vorthak loyalists have taken control of 3 worlds and are attempting to re-establish imperial rule. Set course for Kepler 442. It is time to remind the galaxy why the Empire fell." The liberation missions had become routine. Small groups of Vorthak loyalists would attempt to recreate their former empire, usually by threatening primitive worlds that could not defend themselves. Human intervention fleets would arrive, defeat the loyalists, and help establish local defense forces. But this mission was different. Intelligence reports suggested that the Kepler system held something the loyalists desperately wanted: War Commander Nexthull himself. Nexthull had been hiding on a remote world for months, trying to understand how his empire had collapsed so quickly. The answer had become clear through careful study of human tactics and psychology. They never accepted that they were defeated, he told his remaining officers. Every setback was treated as a temporary obstacle rather than proof of hopelessness. But War Commander, they were primitives with inferior technology. Technology means nothing if you are not willing to use it properly. We had better weapons, but they had better tactics. We had larger ships, but they had more determination. So what do we do now? Nexthull looked out at the stars where his empire had once stretched across thousands of systems. We learn from them. If we want to rebuild, we must become more like the humans. You want to adopt their tactics? I want to adopt their mindset. They refused to accept defeat even when defeat seemed certain. Perhaps that is why they succeeded where we failed. The conversation was interrupted by warning sirens. Human ships had arrived in the system and were demanding the surrender of all Vorthak forces. Admiral Lee studied the tactical situation from his flagship. 3 Vorthak ships were in orbit around the main planet. Intelligence suggested that at least 10,000 Vorthak personnel were on the surface, along with their families and civilian dependents. "This is Admiral Lee Tae-young of the Galactic Liberation Alliance," he broadcast to the Vorthak ships. "You are ordered to surrender immediately and release all hostages." The response came quickly. "This is War Commander Nexthull. I wish to speak with your senior officer." Lee was surprised. Nexthull was the Vorthak commander who had led the original attack on Earth. Intelligence reports suggested he was one of their most capable military leaders. "This is Admiral Lee. What do you want to discuss?" "I want to surrender. Not just my forces here, but all remaining Vorthak loyalist movements." "I am listening." "The war is over. We lost. Continuing to fight will only result in more unnecessary deaths. I am prepared to negotiate terms for the complete surrender of all Vorthak forces." Admiral Lee was skeptical. "Why should we trust you?" "Because I have studied your species for 6 months. I know that you keep your word when you give it. I also know that you do not seek vengeance, only justice." The negotiations took 3 days. Nexthull met with Kim Bo-ra and other Alliance diplomats aboard Lee's flagship. The former Vorthak commander was not what they had expected. "You are different from what I imagined," Kim Bo-ra told him. "I have learned much from studying humanity. Your species has taught the galaxy that strength comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the refusal to be dominated. Is that why you are surrendering?" "I am surrendering because continuing to fight serves no purpose except pride. Humans have shown us that there are more important things than pride." The terms of surrender were surprisingly generous. Vorthak personnel would be allowed to return to their homeworld. No war crimes trials would be conducted for those who had served the Empire before the rebellion. The only requirement was that they renounce any claim to rule over other species. "We are not interested in punishment," Kim Bo-ra explained to the galaxy during the surrender ceremony. "We are interested in ensuring this never happens again." Seo Min-jun had been a philosophy professor before becoming the architect of humanity's post-contact doctrine. His job was to help establish principles that would govern relations between species in the post-imperial galaxy. "The fundamental principle is simple," he wrote in what became known as the Freedom Charter. Every species has the right to determine its own government and way of life. No species has the right to impose its will on another. The Charter became the founding document of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. Unlike the old empire, membership was voluntary and could be withdrawn at any time. We learned from history, Seo Minjun explained to a gathering of galactic historians, empires built on conquest always collapse eventually, but alliances built on mutual benefit can last forever. The transformation was remarkable. Within a year of the empire's collapse, trade between formerly enslaved worlds had increased by 300%. Scientific cooperation had led to breakthroughs that benefited everyone. Art and culture were flourishing as species shared their unique perspectives. But the most important change was psychological. For the first time in centuries, every world in the galaxy knew that they could say no to tyrants. Park Hee-jin had returned to her position as director of Earth's Communications Center, but her job had changed dramatically. Instead of listening for signals from space, she was coordinating communications across hundreds of worlds. "We receive about 10,000 messages per day," she reported to the UN Secretary General. "Most are requests for technical assistance or trade negotiations, but we still get some that are more interesting. Such as, yesterday we received a message from a species in the Andromeda Galaxy. They had heard about what happened here and wanted to know if our methods could help them deal with their own imperial problem. What did you tell them?" "We told them the same thing we tell everyone. You do not need permission to be free. You just need the courage to say no to those who would enslave you." The message was spreading beyond their own galaxy. Species across the universe were learning that resistance was possible, that empires could be defeated, and that freedom was always an option for those willing to fight for it. 5 years after the accidental message that started everything, Kim Tae-ho still worked the night shift at the Jeju Island listening post. But now, instead of listening for alien signals, he monitored the communications of a free galaxy. "Director Park," he called to his supervisor, "we are receiving another distress call." Vorthak loyalists? No, something new. A species called the Hegemony is trying to conquer worlds in the Outer Rim. 3 systems are asking for assistance. Park Hye-jin smiled. "Send word to Admiral Lee. It looks like the galaxy needs liberating again." "Should we also contact the Alliance Council?" "Of course. But I suspect they are already preparing a response. That is what free peoples do when they hear about others who need help." The Liberation Fleet that departed for the Outer Rim included ships from dozens of species, humans, former Vorthak colonies, and entirely new civilizations, all working together to ensure that freedom remained an option throughout the galaxy. War Commander Nexthull, now serving as a strategic advisor to the Alliance, watched the fleet depart from his position on the Alliance Council. "Remarkable," he said to Kim Bo-ra, who served as the human representative. "What is?" 6 years ago, I commanded the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Today I watched dozens of species voluntarily cooperate to help strangers they have never met. Which do you think was more powerful?" Nexthull considered the question carefully. "The old empire could conquer worlds through fear. This alliance liberates worlds through hope. Hope is much more powerful than fear. Is that what you learned from studying humans? That is what humans taught the entire galaxy. You showed us that the only thing more contagious than tyranny is freedom." Kim Bo-ra looked out at the stars where the Liberation Fleet was already engaging Hegemony forces. Early reports suggested that the Hegemony ships were retreating rather than fighting. Word of human tactics had spread throughout the universe. "We never intended to change the galaxy," she said. "But you did, all because you received the wrong message and decided to respond anyway." "Actually, I think we received exactly the right message at exactly the right time." Nexthull nodded in agreement. "Perhaps there are no wrong numbers in the universe.